On July 2, 1943, at the Castel Vetrono airfield in Sicily, the pilot of the Focke-Wulf FW-190 failed to spot the P-40 Warhawk plunging down from the clouds until bullets ripped into his plane's body, causing it to twist wildly and plummet into the landscape of Sicily far below. First, Lieutenant Charles B. Hall, a 22-year-old hailing from Brazil, Indiana, had just achieved what top commanders in the German Luftwaffe deemed unthinkable. A black aviator had taken out one of their premier fighter planes. That swastika marked on Hall's P-40L Warhawk that day marked the initial strike in a tally of 112 enemy planes downed by the airmen whom the Germans allegedly dubbed the Schwarze Vogelmenschen, or Blackbirdmen. Under Nazi racial ideology, people of African descent were deemed Untermenschen, subhuman beings unfit to handle sophisticated equipment or show bravery on the battlefield. The Nuremberg laws had banned unions between Germans and those of African heritage. But now, high over the Mediterranean, that poisonous worldview was set to crash headlong into hard truth as 992 skilled aviators from Tuskegee, Alabama, proceeded to shatter both Luftwaffe planes and the enemy's notions of racial dominance. Unbeknownst to the Luftwaffe flyers ascending to challenge U.S. bombers in 1943, they were on the verge of clashing with some of the most thoroughly prepared and driven pursuit pilots within the whole U.S. Army Air Forces, individuals who had surmounted barriers their white peers never encountered, who had drilled more intensely and persistently than typical squadrons, and who bore into every fight not only the call of patriotism, but the heavier load of validating an entire people's worth. The equations of dogfights were destined to unfold across European heavens. With 15,000 combat flights, 1,578 operations, 112 kills in the air, and an escort failure rate for bombers far below that of white units, those figures would compel even the staunchest Nazi zealots to reckon with the emptiness of their bigoted beliefs. The path to that inaugural triumph didn't start amid warfare, but within the stifling grip of U.S. racial division. Back in 1925, the U.S. Army War College released a study called Employment of Negro Manpower in War, asserting that, compared to the white man, he is admittedly of inferior mentality. He is inherently weak in character. This formal evaluation insisted that African American troops possessed neither the smarts for skilled positions nor the grit for frontline command. Still, while top brass held fast to such biases, a handful of black citizens were quietly disproving them. Eugene Bullard had soared for France during World War I since the U.S. barred his service. Bessie Coleman secured her aviator certification in France in 1921 after American schools rejected her. Into the 1930s, Chicago's Coffey School of Aeronautics had instructed scores of black private pilots, showing that talent in the cockpit ignored skin color. Demands for reform grew sharper as tensions brewed in Europe. Activists such as Walter White of the NAACP, union organizer A. Philip Randolph, and Judge William H. Hastie pressed tirelessly for African American entry into armed aviation. Publications like the Chicago Defender, Pittsburgh Courier, and Baltimore Afro-American relentlessly grilled the Roosevelt government with one stark query. How could the nation champion freedom overseas while withholding it domestically? On April 3, 1939, Public Law 18 at last pried ajar the opportunity. Senator Harry H. Schwartz had slipped in a provision mandating that the Civilian Pilot Training Initiative incorporate at least one facility chosen by the Civil Aeronautics Authority for instructing any Negro aspiring aviator. It amounted to a reluctant nod, still shackled by separation, yet it signaled a start. As Franklin Roosevelt sought a historic third term in 1940, he courted black support in vital urban centers up north. Then, on January 16, 1941, Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson declared the creation of the 99th Pursuit Squadron, a fully segregated black aerial outfit. The reveal carried a qualifier that exposed the armed forces' doubts. This served as a trial to gauge if blacks could qualify as wartime flyers. Captain Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. grasped the gravity of his role as he guided 26 members of the 99th Fighter Squadron to North Africa in April 1943. The offspring of the nation's inaugural black general, Davis had weathered 4 years of isolation at West Point, ignored by white classmates except for required interactions. He now led troops who shouldered not merely personal dreams, but the dreams of 13 million fellow black citizens. The 99th touchdown in Frejana, Tunisia, integrated into the 33rd Fighter Group led by Colonel William W. Momey, a leader who openly questioned the abilities of black aviators. Momey relegated them to scouting runs over the Mediterranean, shielding them from genuine combat. He hoped for their shortcomings, and when early results fell short of brilliance, he seized his rationale. The M. The dawn of June 2nd, 1943, signaled the start of their initial battle engagement, a strike against the Italian-controlled island of Pantelleria. While their battered P-40 Warhawks ascended to engage the objectives, German interceptors materialized out of nowhere. The Tuskegee aviators maintained tight formation, shielding their accompanying bombers. Neither side suffered any plane losses, yet the Germans absorbed a vital early insight. These airmen refused to falter amid intense duress. However, it was the events of July 2, 1943, that altered the course dramatically. Charles Hall piloted his 8th sortie, providing cover for B-25 Mitchell bombers as they assaulted Castelvetrano airfield in Sicily. A pair of Fowler-Wolf 190s closed in aggressively on the bomber group. Hall recounted in his later account, "I observed 2 Fowler-Wolves trailing the bombers immediately following the bomb release. I maneuvered into the gap separating the enemy fighters from the bombers and succeeded in getting inside the Jerry's turn. I unleashed a prolonged salvo and watched my tracers strike the second plane. It was banking leftward, but abruptly lost altitude and plunged directly into the terrain." Upon Hall's return to base, jubilation swept through the facility. African-American ground support teams who had weathered countless derogatory remarks from white counterparts for months now possessed a resounding rebuttal to every affront. Hall's triumph marked the inaugural air-to-air victory credited to an African-American aviator in the annals of U.S. military aviation. By January 1944, the 99th Fighter Squadron had logged 7 months of active warfare, yet Colonel Meare had submitted a harshly critical assessment alleging insufficient initiative and urging their withdrawal from frontline duties. This evaluation landed on the desk of General Henry Hap Arnold, who geared up to terminate the initiative. Then arrived the pivotal moment at Anzio. On January 27, 1944, the Luftwaffe unleashed enormous assaults on Allied troops positioned at the Anio beachhead. 15 members of the 99th, operating outdated P-40s, confronted advanced Fowler-Wolf 190s above the conflict zone. The ensuing action would permanently hush the detractors. The 99th downed numerous adversary planes, with accounts differing from 8 to 13 successes across 2 days. Captain Charles Hall secured 2 additional triumphs, elevating his count to 3. Over those 2 days, despite wielding subpar machinery, they eliminated more foe aircraft than during the entirety of their prior 7 months in action. The War Department initiated an examination pitting the 99th against comparable P-40 units and determined their effectiveness matched that of white squadrons. The accomplishments at Anzio demonstrated unequivocally that African-American pilots thrived in battle when afforded the chance. In May 1944, the 332nd Fighter Group, merging the 99th, 100th, 3001st, and 3002nd Fighter Squadrons, received directives that elevated them from marginalized figures to enduring icons. They integrated into the 15th Air Force for long-range bomber protection, undertaking perilous ventures far into the heart of Nazi-held territory. At Ramitelli Airfield along Italy's Adriatic shoreline, Colonel Benjamin Davis assembled his aviators. He emphasized, "We cannot tolerate the loss of bombers. Our role isn't to rack up personal aces. Our mission is to ensure those bombers return safely." This guidance shaped their approach to warfare: adhere to the bombers under all circumstances. During June 1944, General Nathan Twining instituted a structured identification scheme for fighter outfits. Each group acquired unique hues for rapid visual recognition. The 332nd drew red, not merely red tips or stripes, but full crimson rear sections. Their P-51 Mustangs, featuring red tails, red propeller hubs, and red forward stripes, stood out unmistakably. The initial bomber formations guarded by these red-tailed escorts remained unaware that their defenders were African American. They simply recognized that these escorts clung steadfastly, foregoing pursuits of isolated targets. Rumors circulated rapidly among bomber units: seek out the red tails whenever possible. The ordeal of July 18, 1944, would push the red tails to unprecedented limits. Colonel Davis commanded 66 Mustangs to link up with bombers aimed at the Luftwaffe installation in Memming, Germany. The bombers arrived behind schedule. Davis opted for a bold choice: circle within hostile airspace instead of heading back. As the bombers eventually emerged, so too did the Luftwaffe, roughly 100 German interceptors swarming from various angles. The enemy presumed superior numbers could shatter the red tail's defensive barrier. Amid the 332nd's valiant resistance, which netted claims of 11 to 12 enemy planes, 15 B-17s succumbed to the onslaught in just 20 minutes of brutal fighting. The 332nd mourned 3 of its own: Lieutenants Robert Hutton, Wellington Irving, and Alfred Brown. Detractors argued the heavy bomber casualties exposed the supposed inadequacy of African American pilots in large-scale confrontations. Yet, a thorough operational review uncovered the reality. The 332nd had entered a dire scenario where overwhelming German strength was already overwhelming the bombers. Their efforts averted total catastrophe. By March 1945, the Luftwaffe's traditional fighters struggled to contest Allied dominance in the skies. Still, Germany retained a final gambit: the Messerschmitt Mi-262, history's pioneering operational jet combatant. Capable of reaching 540 mph, it surpassed all propeller-powered foes in velocity. On March 24, 1945, the 332nd Fighter Group faced its toughest challenge yet, shepherding bombers on a 1,600-mile round-trip incursion to Berlin, targeting the Daimler-Benz tank production facility. Intel intelligence reports indicated that Mi-262s originating from Yamagata 7 would safeguard the objective. Colonel Davis commanded a formation of 43 P-51 Mustangs straight into the core of the Reich. Upon nearing Berlin, the Mi-262s emerged, forming the biggest assembly of jet fighters ever gathered for one defensive action. Lieutenant Roscoe Brown had thoroughly examined the jets' vulnerabilities. We recognized that the German jets outpaced ours. Rather than pursuing them head-on, we veered off in the opposite direction before swinging into their vulnerable angles, he described. Brown downed a single Mi-262, stating, "I pulled up at him in a 15-degree incline and fired 3 long bursts from 2,000 FT at 8 to him. Almost immediately, the pilot bailed out from about 24,500 FD. Lieutenant Earl Lane accomplished what numerous observers deemed unfeasible, taking out an Mi-262 via a 2,000-yard deflection shot employing the innovative K-14 computing gun sight. Lieutenant Charles Brantley secured the 3rd jet triumph that day. Eliminating 3 Mi-262s in one clash surpassed the number of jets that most fighter units would eliminate throughout the whole conflict. The Red Tails had surpassed the aggregate of all prior U.S. Mi-262 destructions in just one afternoon. The 332nd Fighter Group received a Distinguished Unit Citation for this operation. Not every clash between Tuskegee Airmen and German forces concluded with success. 32 pilots ended up as prisoners of war, and their ordeals highlighted intricate dynamics between Nazi beliefs and wartime realities. Lieutenant Alexander Jefferson got shot down on August 12, 1944, during his 19th sortie. His P-51 encountered flak over southern France amid attacks on radar sites. During questioning, the German officer possessed detailed knowledge on the 332nd Fighter Group. The interrogator knew specifics about Ramitelli Airfield, our squadron leaders, and even particulars about my family's residence in Detroit, Jefferson remembered. He was aware my father worked as a teacher and my mother's birth name. Their reconnaissance was alarmingly comprehensive. Within Stalag Luft III, Jefferson encountered treatment akin to that of any other U.S. officer. White POWs from bomber units frequently expressed thanks to him for the red tail escorts. Such exchanges, unthinkable in divided America, arose spontaneously in German captivity sites. The paradox did not escape Jefferson. Here I was in a Nazi POW camp, receiving fairer treatment from white Americans than I would at home. Upon the conflict's conclusion and Jefferson's return to the United States, segregation struck him right away at the arrival station. Although German aviators supposedly recognized the Red Tail's prowess with the moniker Schwarze Vogelschwarm, U.S. bomber personnel emerged as their strongest advocates. These individuals confronting mortality on each flight disregarded ethnicity, focusing solely on endurance. Bomber teams crafted their own legends surrounding the Red Tails. Tales circulated about their unique aerial maneuvers, the wingdips they used as salutes, their compact groupings, and their commitment to shielding impaired bombers. Red Tail Angels emerged as the bomber crew's term for them. Data backed the bomber personnel's favoritism. Studies by Air Force scholar Dr. Daniel Hallman showed that aircraft protected by the 332nd Fighter Group suffered just 27 losses to foe fighters, versus an average of 46 for other P-51 units in the 15th Air Force. This exceptional safeguard rate persisted even as the Red Tails undertook some of the protracted and riskiest assignments of the war. By the war's close, the Tuskegee Airmen had amassed a battle history that shattered all pre-conflict notions regarding African American troops' effectiveness. Combat activities, 1,578 missions executed, over 15,000 individual flights accomplished, 179 bomber protection assignments. 311 operations for the 15th Air Force. Foe planes eliminated, 112 adversary aircraft downed in dogfights, 150 adversary aircraft wrecked on the ground. 3 Mi-262 jet fighters felled on March 24, 1945. Ground objectives neutralized, 950 rail cars, trucks, and vehicles, 254 locomotive engines. TA-22 ex-Italian vessel Giuseppe Missori crippled irreparably on June 25, 1944. Safeguard record, 27 bombers lost to enemy fighters against 46 average for other units. Outstanding protection level upheld over 179 escort duties. Personal accomplishments, Lee Archer, 4 verified kills. Joseph Ellsbury, 4 triumphs, encompassing 3 FW-190s on July 12, 1944. Edward Toppins, 4 kills. Clarence Lester, 3 victories in a single mission, July 18, 1944. Honors received: 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses for 332nd Fighter Group aviators, 744 Air Medals, 14 Bronze Stars, 8 Purple Hearts, 3 Distinguished Unit Citations for the 99th Fighter Squadron, 1 Distinguished Unit Citation for the 332nd Fighter Group. Human toll: 66 pilots slain in combat, 32 pilots taken as POWs, 84 fatalities in training and non-battle incidents. The shift from derision to admiration extended beyond bravery. It showcased advanced U.S. instruction techniques and tech edges that the Red Tails applied with precision played a pivotal role. Tuskegee trainees logged far more flight time than white peers, reaching 300 hours versus just 200 for others. They drilled relentlessly on group maneuvers, recognizing that strict order would prove crucial in battle. Failure rates hit 60% at Tuskegee, double the 40% among white trainees. Just the elite made it through, forming what Colonel Noel Parrish, the base leader, described as an exceptionally elite cadre. The shift across plane models revealed plenty on its own. The 99th Pursuit Squadron started out with outdated P-40 Warhawks, relics by the time they reached North Africa. These fighters, powered by liquid-cooled Allison engines, lagged behind German Bf-109s and FW-190s in nearly all specs. Still, Tuskegee aviators leveraged the P-40's sharp maneuverability and tough build to stand firm. The June 1944 introduction of P-51 Mustangs elevated the Red Tails to match any squadron in the conflict. The North American P-51D Mustang embodied peak U.S. manufacturing. Its Packard-produced Merlin power plant delivered a maximum velocity of 437 km. The 50-caliber cannons could shred any foe in the sky. Above all, its endurance, exceeding 2,600 miles using auxiliary tanks, enabled deep runs to shield bombers across the German heartland. For every flyer downing a Nazi plane, countless backup staff stood ready. technicians, gunners, and maintenance leads who ensured the Red Tails stayed airborne. Out of roughly 16,000 Tuskegee personnel, under 1,000 served as pilots. The majority were the overlooked champions enabling triumphs. These support teams pulled off feats amid tight constraints. Ramitelli Base in Italy felt basic next to other U.S. sites. Replacement components ran short, leaving the 332nd Fighter Group at the end of supply queues. Nevertheless, their readiness figures, the share of aircraft fit for missions, matched or topped those of white outfits. These teams endured enemy fire, too. Attacks on Ramitelli proved infrequent yet lethal. During the March 24, 1944, German airstrike, blasts claimed lives among the ground staff. Undeterred, the crew pressed on amid the chaos, hauling planes clear of exploding fuel stores. The massive bombing offensive across Europe served as the perfect arena to gauge the Tuskegee force. Every B-17 Flying Fortress ran 238,000 and housed 10 skilled operators. Losing one machine meant a major tactical blow echoing through the campaign. That's exactly why guarding bombers outweighed dogfight kills. Collator Benjamin O. Davis Jr. grasped this, directing his men to ignore lures from enemy pursuits. Dropping duty to bag a fighter is easy, he noted. True resolve means sticking to the formation as foes flee. Red Tail protection strategies refined over time in action. They crafted a tiered shield, tight covers zigzagging over the heavies, mid-range watchers to block approaching threats, and top-cover sentries scanning for steep plunges. Such a setup demanded flawless teamwork and unwavering focus. The Tuskegee Airmen waged dual battles, one versus tyranny overseas, the other against bias stateside. Their battlefield feats undercut both Hitler's supremacist views and U.S. divisions, showing skill in dogfights ignored skin color. As they clashed with the Luftwaffe overseas, they confronted bigotry back home. Their takedowns of German planes splashed across African-American outlets, yet white media often downplayed or skipped them. The Pittsburgh Courier's Double V drive, Triumphs Abroad and Equality Here, highlighted the Tuskegee Airmen as key symbols. Germans grasped the difference sharply. By 1945, the Luftwaffe pinpointed the red-tailed Mustang pilots, dubbing them Schwarze Vogelmenschen. In contrast, countless white U.S. citizens remained unaware of black aces. This blackout was intentional. The War Department seldom trumpeted Tuskegee successes. Europe's liberation ushered in no fanfare for the group, only doubts about what lay ahead. As other units geared up for homecoming marches, the 332nd grappled with an unclear path. The Army Air Forces clung to separation policies, blind to wartime proof of their folly. For years following World War II, Tuskegee exploits stayed hidden from wider U.S. view. Many pilots coped with this oversight personally. Lee Archer, holder of 4 kills, climbed to corporate ranks but seldom shared his exploits. Folks wouldn't buy it regardless, he recalled. A black combat pilot? Sounds like fiction. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman issued Executive Order 9981, merging the armed forces, a move shaped by Tuskegee prowess. Benjamin O. Davis Jr., who'd guided the Red Tails to Berlin skies, rose as the Air Force's inaugural black general in 1954. Honors trickled in gradually. In 2007, President George W. Bush bestowed the Congressional Gold Medal upon the Tuskegee Airmen. Just 300 of the starting pilots lived long enough to join the ceremony. Countless individuals had endured more than 6 decades in pursuit of nationwide acknowledgement. The shift from derision to admiration proved no mere legend, but a matter of historical record. The statistics stand unchallenged, a total of 112 triumphs in the skies over the Luftwaffe. 3 Mi-262 jet aircraft taken down during a single sortie. 150 hostile planes eliminated while stationary. Just 27 bombers sacrificed compared to the typical 46 for comparable units. An impressive 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses awarded to aviators of the 332nd Fighter Group. The moniker Schwarzer Vogel, as it was known, illustrated how bias dissolves in the face of indisputable prowess. Each adversary pilot felled, each bomber safeguarded, each assignment fulfilled, built toward an unassailable argument. A flyer's pigmentation bore no relation to his skill in the air or in battle. Roscoe Brown, who downed a German jet above Berlin, encapsulated their legacy. We didn't merely clash with the Germans. We battled against narrow-mindedness, bigotry, and animosity. And we prevailed in every confrontation. The Tuskegee Airmen had achieved far more than military victories. They reshaped the course of events. They waged 3 conflicts at once and emerged triumphant in all, vanquishing the Luftwaffe through sheer combat skill, undermining Nazi doctrines of racial superiority via their deeds, and ultimately eroding U.S. racial divides with their irrefutable mastery. Provided the chance, the Tuskegee Airmen ascended to greatness, converting scorn into esteem, intolerance into endorsement, and foes into observers of their remarkable feats.